Day-Achauer. Thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure to be here today.
I appreciate it. Thank you for accepting my invitation. Tell me a little bit about your background.
Well, I'm not originally from Ohio. I'm originally from California. I grew up in the California Gold Country, and then for 20 years I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area working in business. I worked for the 5th largest not-for-profit hospital system in the United States.
Oh, okay.
I assisted the chief legal officer. Then I came to Ohio to earn my master's degree.
Okay.
And fell in love with Columbus, and just saw Columbus as a great place to move and to live here. And I served as a United Methodist pastor starting in 2008 up until I took office. I'm on leave now from that.
Okay.
And the bulk of my ministry has been on the west side of Columbus, doing a lot of work with addressing human service needs, particularly food insecurity, senior services, addiction, both prevention and harm reduction, and working a lot with our older adults, and just had lots of conversations with the community about what their needs are and finding practical ways to help address them.
Let's talk about it in a conversation, and I think that's how you get things done, I believe, in terms of like communicating to, with people, trying to find what their real needs are. And first of all, how long have you been in office?
I started just this last January. I was elected past November.
Past November. So it's less than a year, right?
Correct.
Okay. What are the challenges in getting into the community and having a real conversation with the people that actually you feel like you're in need, or people that we think that may have elected you to be on there?
Well, the challenges are like anytime you're trying to get people together is try to find a time and a place where people can come together and have conversations. I do spend a lot of my time having meetings with people. I am always open to have coffee with somewhere, although I won't drink the coffee. I'll be having iced tea, but you'll be drinking coffee at the coffee house. And making connections with a variety of community leaders, because they're, of course, able to pull even more people together. For example, the Somali Town Hall that I had one on the west side earlier this year. I have one coming up on the north side later this month. And
we're in the west side, and we're in upcoming meeting.
On the west side, I had it at the Hilltop Library.
The Hilltop Library,
yeah.
Okay.
And then for the one on the north side, it's at Woodward Park Community Center on Carl Road.
Okay.
So we wanted a place that was centrally located, that had parking, someplace that people could easily find, and also a neutral place. We didn't want to go to somebody's business or a particular mosque or whatever, because we didn't want people to say, well, hey, why didn't you choose mine? So stayed neutral. So
a lot of it in politics just stay neutral.
Stay neutral so that nobody gets upset.
That's one way to reduce a complaint.
Yeah, and then a variety of people in the Somali community help get the word out. Having lived and worked on the west side, I already had relationships in the Somali community before I ran for office. And so connecting with those people, who then, of course, connected with even more people, so that we can get the word out to a big cross-section of the community that we're having this town hall. And the town hall is based upon conversations I had when I ran for office. We had 5 community meetings across the city of Columbus while I ran for office. And I found that people were always asking, a lot of them were asking the same questions. Help for small businesses. There are a lot of entrepreneurs in the Somali community. And just trying to find out, what resources does the city have that can help support small businesses? Help for nonprofits. The Somali community has a lot of great scrappy little nonprofits, as well as some big ones. And they struggle, like all nonprofits do, with fundraising. And so the questions of, well, how can we get help, applying for grants, things like that. and a lot of basic questions about, I have trouble with this. How can I get help? And it's like, well, legal aid would be one to, a help for that. And so just looking at all these questions that came up frequently in all of these, we did the town hall on the west side, and it's going to be identical pretty much to the one on the north side, where I bring in people who actually are doing the work and have the answers, as opposed to traditionally a town hall, you come and you ask questions, and then the person says, I'll get back to you on that. So we're front loading this by having the city's small business program. People from there are coming to talk about it. We have the Chamber of Commerce, which has great programs that the city funds. And they're starting a new, I'm not sure what the exact title is, but it's a special subsection of their chamber that is geared particularly for immigrant businesses.
Okay.
So we're having them come.
And who's driving that?
That is actually the Columbus Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
And then we have legal aid coming, because they provide a variety of services that people are not aware of, including help when you have a child who has special needs and getting what they need from the local school. Legal aid can actually, help with this type of thing. We also have Celebrate One coming, and that's
what is that?
That's a program in both the city and the county that works on infant mortality. So they work with pregnant women and women with infants to improve health and to get them resources that they need, so that children will actually, make it past their first year, because we do have low infant mortality in Columbus compared to other cities. And so this program just helps women provide them with the needs, getting them to the medical care that they need and whatnot, so that they can have healthy births and healthy infants.
So those are the people that will be accompanying you?
They will be there,
okay.
Yes, speaking about that. And we also have the library who will be there.
Okay.
A lot of people don't realize that the library, in addition to the many wonderful things that they do, they have free programs that are video programs on professional development. So you can build skills to further yourself in your career.
Okay.
And we will also have information there from our building trades. Quite often people say, well, my son, my spouse, my whoever, has trouble finding a living wage job. And the building trades are an incredible opportunity to not only earn a living wage, but to get benefits, to get retirement. And their program is Earn While You Learn. You actually get paid while you're learning the trade in the apprenticeship program. And you also are doing work as well. It's like this great secret that people don't know about. And so when people are always saying, well, I can't find a retail job or a food service job that pays well enough. And I go, well, no, you never will. Those are not jobs that will ever pay a living wage.
Yeah.
But the building trades, and there's so many different trades that are available, and you get the education for free.
And you get paid at the same time.
And you get paid.
Yeah.
You get paid.
Yeah.
You earn while you learn. It's incredible.
Excellent.
And so bringing that information to the community in these town halls, so people get connected right away. And the format that we use is each of these different organizations, they get 5 minutes or so to talk about what it is that they do. And then the last half hour, 45 minutes of this town hall is actually the opportunity for the attendees to just go around and talk one-on-one with these people. So instead of doing a Q&A where, everybody has to listen to your question and maybe it doesn't apply to what they're interested in, instead, the Q&A is one-on-one, going around to the different organizations and talking to them and getting connected with them.
Yeah, and that's one excellent way to do a network. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of great networking opportunities. So that's just kind of an example of, bringing community together and to help meet needs.
Okay. I want to step back a little bit and ask you your early decisions that kind of sort of led to going to run for the city council in Columbus City Council. So tell me a little bit more about that. What actually led up to that? What gets you there? What kind of sort of sparked that idea to say, okay, hey, maybe I can make a difference?
In my work on the West Side, I was frequently advocating for the community with elected officials, making them aware of things that were going on in the community, making them drive all the way out to the far west side of Columbus, where no one from downtown ever goes, so that they can see just, all of the West Side, because people tend to think West Side is just Hilltop, and that's not true.
Yeah.
And
it extends all the way to Hilliard.
Yes, and goes up to Hilliard and down. Yes, it's quite large. And so I was always having these conversations, and the elected officials would often connect me with other people who might be able to help out and whatnot. And I just felt that by serving on council, I could actually do more good for more people, that I could reach far more people, and not just people in my little part of the city, but people throughout the city of Columbus, if I were to serve on council instead. I grew up in a family that was always politically engaged back in California.
Okay.
My father was chairman of the Democratic Central Committee out there several times.
Okay.
We volunteered in campaigns. So the political side was not something that was new for me. And I already was volunteering on political campaigns and serving on the Central Committee and helping other people get elected. So it wasn't a big leap for me to make that decision.
Okay. So you did a lot of work with the community. And that, pretty much not only on your community, but kind of sort of the across-the-board community that lived on the west side of it. So tell me a little bit about the early process of kind of sort of getting connected with the Somali community. What was that avenue like for you?
Well,
what was the culture shock for you, per se, right?
The church that I served on the west side was down the road a bit from the Abakar Mosque that had just opened when I was doing it. And so I pulled him up on the internet, and I found the email, and so I shot him an email and said, hey, pastor just down the road, would love to welcome you to the community, would love to get together, tell you who the stakeholders are in the community, show you around, just get you connected with who's doing what.
Right.
And and so they contacted me back, and then we got together and we had a meeting, and one of the directors there joined our ministerial association. I helped them with their Meet a Muslim events when they first got started. They had several Meet a Muslims, and so I helped them recruit the non-Muslims to attend the Meet a Muslim event. And also they would call me up and they go, hey, we want to have this, particular kind of event. And I would say, oh, you don't have it on that day, that time, because that's OSU football or whatever, just little tidbits like
insight,
that. Connected them with Ohio Health, Doctors Hospital, so just little things like that where they would contact me, and so that was the building of the relationship. Being from California, I'm accustomed to multiculturalism, so it wasn't the huge culture shock that might have been for some people who were not accustomed to being in that kind of environment.
Okay, excellent. So what is it like when you knew that you were actually going to be, going in there? Like when you find out, the victory, the night of the elections of that you actually won. And also, was it hope? Did you hope to be what it was going to be when you actually got into office? What was it like that for you?
Well, of course, winning was very exciting.
I bet.
I'll bet. And I won every precinct in the city, including the Republican precincts. So that was pretty exciting. Because I had a Republican opponent. Because I had engaged a lot with city council, I had a pretty good idea of what was involved. But in some ways, it sounds weird, in some ways it was a lot like church, because it's an old building. So the the air conditioning and the heat, it's a little whimsical, shall we say. I had to go down into the basement to pick up my furniture from the old discarded furniture graveyard in the basement. So yeah, there were quirky things like that kind of made me feel at home, just like in church.
Okay.
But things that are different, that I didn't quite expect, because most of my colleagues have full-time jobs and the council is part-time, we often don't cross paths at City Hall as often as I expected, because everybody has different days that they come in, and so that was a surprise that I just wouldn't see them as often as I had expected to. Not that that's a bad thing. It's just that, I thought I'd be having water cooler conversations.
Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, right?
Right. So that was different. Some things that were not a surprise but were disappointing was how there are people in the community who don't know you, who've made no effort to understand or know anything about you, who just outright lie about you. And
like what?
Oh, well, some examples recently is this one person at a hearing said that those of us on council who were supporting Zone In were doing it for the money. And he said, I've looked at your campaign financing and I know you get tens of thousands of dollars from developers. And I'm like, okay, if you'd actually looked at my campaign financing, you would know that I only received one donation from a developer, and it was $500. And the only no vote on a development I've done on council was actually against that person who gave me $500. I go, I've never received tens of thousands of dollars from a developer. I mean, most of my donors actually are small donors in that $50 to $100 range. The majority, my biggest donor block is actually Somali Americans and Irish Americans. That's my donor base there. So things like that, where people.
So how did they actually come and give them some time and they actually express that feeling, or they do that on writing? How did they?
This person was actually at a hearing, and was signed up to be a speaker.
Okay.
And things like that happen, whereas people just totally make stuff up. And it's like, if you want to prove a point, use facts. Don't make something up.
Yeah.
To try to, elevate yourself, because that doesn't. So that was one of those things that I knew that happened in politics, but it happens more frequently than I had imagined. You expect that during campaign season, where people are going to say things like that, but it's like, really?
So when you get in the office, what are some of the things that you had in mind that you kind of sort of went, hey, did the first thing that I wanted to work on, first thing that I want to go ahead and advocate for it, the first thing that I wanted to go ahead and just, put forth for it. So what was those items for you?
My first one, and that just recently launched, was the Help for Nonprofits.
Okay.
Because all those nonprofits had talked to me about how hard it was, and a lot of them came to me and said, well, I applied for a grant from the city, I've applied for grants from other organizations, and I don't get chosen, and I don't understand why. And so I went and spoke with people who review grant applications, both in the city and elsewhere, and I said, well, what are the common reasons why people don't get, accepted? And they said, number one is usually they didn't complete the form, or they didn't provide the information that was requested, or they didn't answer the question properly. It's like, so basically most people aren't getting these because they lack the skills to do a good grant application. And that's really understandable. Nonprofits are really great at their thing. If they're in youth programming, they're really great at youth programming. If they do food insecurity, they're really great at that. But grant writing is a specialty.
Right.
It's something that most people don't have that skill.
I mean, most of the nonprofit, they outsource that, don't they? Or they try to
it's very expensive to outsource
That's
it.
True.
And so if you're a small, scrappy one, you can't afford.
Or maybe getting started,
Yeah, or just getting started. You can't afford to hire someone to do that. And so I thought, well, we need like a little school
Yeah,
for
yeah.
nonprofits. And so I contacted the Human Service Chamber, which is sort of a chamber of commerce, but for nonprofits in the human services sector. Because they already provide a lot of, like, some free trainings and a lot of services for their members. And I pitched this idea to them, and I said, well, this is what I'd like to do, is have some little school so they can learn how to do that.
Yeah.
And they're like, wow, this is a really great idea. And so we brought in Libby V. Associates, which is a company that people hire to write grants.
Okay.
And so the three of us created this program where these nonprofits, we can take 20 of them. We have enough funding to take 20 of them. And they will get training in a lot of those basics that a lot of people struggle with, such as knowing how to properly write out a budget, knowing how to effectively write a mission statement, knowing how to describe what your program does with both data and inspiration so that people will want to fund you. So all those little things they'll be get training in, but they're also going to get coaching. And so training and coaching over the course of a year, so it's a year-long program. They also get access to full membership of the Human Service Chamber. And as they've completed all their training, we're going to do some mock grant applications. So they have a chance to try out their skills. And then that way we can come back and say, okay, you need to work a little on this, really great on that, expand a little bit on this, need better data on this. So they can, learn how to do it well. With the goal being that when they complete the program, that they will be more successful at getting grants.
Yeah. When is that going to go live?
Well, we started accepting applications this month,
Okay.
and we're accepting them through the 26th.
For nonprofit to apply that program to attend, basically how to apply a grant and how to learn
Yes.
the process from A to Z, basically.
Right. So
Okay.
we call the program Getting Grant Ready Academy.
Okay.
And you can, on my social media and on the city council social media page, you can find the post on it and click on the link.
Okay.
It does explain the criteria. You have to be a nonprofit that serves in the city of Columbus.
How long you have to be in nonprofit? Does
It has to be, we don't have a minimum time that you have to be, but it
Okay.
could not be more than 10 years.
Okay.
So we're looking for the newer, small, scrappy ones.
Okay.
So the ones that only have 10 or fewer employees, the
Gotcha.
people who don't have someone on staff to write grants. So we're truly going for
Yeah.
the small, scrappy ones.
Okay. Okay.
And I said we only have 20 positions.
Mm-hmm.
Last I looked, we have 93 applicants.
Oh, okay.
But don't feel discouraged, all
Yeah.
of you out there, because there are quite a few of them that I looked and it's like, okay, you didn't read the instructions
Yeah.
because it says Columbus only, and
Yeah.
you're in Pickerington and Reynoldsburg and all these places.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people who applied that will not be accepted.
How long?
because they're not in
How long
Columbus.
will the application be open?
Through the 26th of this month.
Okay.
And then we'll be, later that week, we will be deciding who our 20 are.
Okay.
And we'll be notifying them. And the sessions will then start in September, but we'll be meeting with the 20 recipients
Prior
to
to
kind of
that.
work on how we're going to arrange the schedule.
Okay. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. Is there any other one that you hope that you would want to go ahead and work on that still kind of sort of lingering, didn't get the eyes or the votes or?
Well, of course, one of them is one of those that's, because it's huge,
Yeah.
it's going to take years.
Okay.
And that is equity in parks and recreation.
Okay.
Columbus Recreation and Parks, great programs. But we're a big city and we're a growing city, and there are parts of the
We're a
city
growing city,
that
yeah.
do not have much in the way of parks, who do not have recreation centers, parts of the city that do not have programming for recreation and parks. So working on getting programming and facilities and whatnot in more places in the city. So started with, we did expand the program called Center Without Walls, where we take programming and run it out of like schools. So we expanded that this year, and looking, hopefully we can keep expanding it each year so we can get it in more and more neighborhoods. And then ultimately, we need to have recreation centers in some of those outer belt communities that currently do not have access to them. That's a real long haul because it costs, 10, 12, $15 million to build recreation centers. So it takes a long time to get those. So that's kind of the long game that I'm working on is getting that by at least getting programming to these communities in the interim until we can, hopefully one day have more facilities.
If somebody's listening to our conversation and not quite sure, understanding what Columbus City Council do, the structure of the city council, and besides based on the district that you came from, that you've been elected to, but in general inside of it. So give us like a general idea of like what's like the org chart, or what's like how. So give us just a general overview of the Columbus City Council itself.
Yeah, Columbus City Council is the legislative branch of government.
Okay.
So if you think the U.S. government, you have the executive branch, the president, and then you have, Congress.
Yeah.
And we are essentially the local equivalent of Congress.
Okay.
So a lot of what we do is like super boring stuff, because nothing can be spent in the city without it being legislated. And so when the Department of Utilities needs to order a whole bunch of chemicals for the sewer plant, we have to actually pass legislation for that purchase to be made. So a big chunk of what we do is super, super boring.
And super, super slow.
And super slow. There's, you pass the legislation, it takes 30 days, unless, it's an emergency one, but something happened. So there's a big part of what we do that is just like super boring, but that's what enables the city to run.
Okay.
But we do, come up with initiatives on our own.
Okay.
That we work on, such as Rob Doran's had the wage theft, which was outlawed wage theft in the city of Columbus. If you want to have a contract with the city of Columbus, you could not have participated in wage theft.
What is wage theft?
Wage theft is where your employer doesn't pay you all that you're owed, and they have fancy little ways to get around it. Some just don't pay them their overtime.
Okay.
Some do things like they change the category. Oh, well, for the first 8 hours you were working this category, but then for the last 2, it was over here. So that's, that's not different. Overtime. That's a different job. I was like, no, that's overtime. This is the same company. That's overtime.
Gotcha.
Cheating on, you have to.
So you're talking about like in order to get a city contract, you cannot.
And creating systems for for just keeping an eye on and monitoring people, because wage theft happens a lot. Okay. And it particularly happens to minorities.
Yeah.
People who struggle with English.
Yeah.
Because there are some employers that take advantage of people.
For sure.
Which is why our unions were fighting with the airport authority here in Columbus about hiring union companies, because the contractor that they're using had committed wage theft in other places. And so trying to hold people accountable for that. It's one of those really important things. Councilmember Lourdes Barroso de Padilla had the thing on salary history.
Okay.
So you can't ask, an employer can't ask an applicant how much money they made at their previous job.
Okay.
Because a lot of employers will use that to, maybe they were willing to pay how much you pay, as opposed to how much the position actually is worth. Yeah. And so you can't ask that.
In the Somali community, our youth are struggling. There is some gun violence, and there is and a lot of it is mental health.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
Our summer youth programs. On that, one of the criteria for that was we were looking for programs that would address youth violence and mental health and whatnot. So, providing, finding organizations that are doing the work to help with, and then, try to fund those. One of the big challenges with the youth violence we have, as you mentioned, is mental health, behavioral health.
Yeah.
And there is huge stigma in
Big.
not the Somali community, but let's be honest, in all communities, there's stigma about mental health.
True.
This desire, you know, parents don't want to acknowledge that their child has that because they often think, well, that it's a reflection on their parenting. And getting people to, one, be aware that they have these needs, and then be willing to get the help they need and understand that this is not a moral failure. You have a medical condition. Mental health is a medical issue. And getting people to understand that, to be willing to ask for help, to show up for the appointments, to do the things that the mental health professional tells you need to do.
Yeah.
And that's hard work. Getting to a place of mental wellness takes effort. And we as a community at large need to be more supportive of people who are in need of mental health services. And we need to stop shaming them. We need to stop shaming their families. And just recognize that this is like any other medical condition. It's just like, you know, if you had diabetes, you know, everybody with diabetes, go to the doctor, do what the doctor tells you. But for some reason, for mental health, people think that that's different, and it's not. It's also a medical condition, and we need, as communities, this has to come from the community of being aware and supportive of people getting that help.
Is the city budgets certain dollar amounts toward to that?
Every year, it's coming up soon.
Okay. We
have we pass the operating budget.
Okay.
And there is typically an amount of operating budget dollars that council can legislate to organizations that we choose.
Okay.
Now, every year that amount is different.
Okay.
And we can't guarantee that every year that there will even be
Okay.
an amount for that. But when that operating budget comes out, and it starts coming out from the mayor's office end of the year-ish, and then in January and February is when council finds out, one, if they have any money that they can use at their discretion for things. Any nonprofit organization can go on to the council grants portal there on the columbus.gov and apply. And this is one of those things where grant writing is really important. And, explaining, well, this is what I do, and this is the target audience that I want to reach, and, just complete all that information. And then you go and you also pitch it to the council members. Ask to have a meeting with, try to get a meeting with all of the council members if you can. Because oftentimes what happens, and I'll just use a random number that'll be, easy math. So say you needed $1,000. Well, one council member might say, okay, I can do the $1,000. But but it might be a situation where council members have already allocated quite a bit, and so individually they don't have 1,000, but collectively they could each throw in, that 100, whatever, and get to the $1,000. So that's why you want to speak with multiple council members, because it might be something where different ones would chip in on their percentage of, of budgetary finances that they have that they can put towards that. And we saw that in the last cycle. There were some things that, such as, this nonprofit program, I allocated $100,000 for that, and that was just from me. But there were some other programs where 4 or 5 of us got together and pooled the resources together. The Somali Cultural Festival was actually, there were several of us who chipped money in together to help fund the Somali Cultural Festival.
Excellent. Columbus is growing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
Why do you think Columbus is getting big?
Because this is a great place to go for opportunity.
Talk about that a little
When
bit
you
more.
look at the incredible amount of things that are happening, businesses that are expanding in the city or adjacent to the city. And so even, Intel, it's not in Columbus, but a lot of the young
Columbus
professionals,
claiming it.
well, they need our water. They need our, but a lot of the people who are working there are going to be, think of it, if you're 25 years old and you're going to go to work to Intel, are you going to want to live in a small town, suburban town? Or are you going to be living downtown Columbus, where you've got all the restaurants and all the cultural activities and Nationwide Arena and all that?
All the fun stuff.
All the fun stuff. You're going to want to live in Columbus.
Yeah, that's true.
Columbus has, it has incredible arts community. It has incredible sports community. We've got a great soccer team.
We sure do.
We sure do. We have so many great things to enjoy so that you can have a good quality of life out here. To say, I was in the San Francisco Bay Area where there's a lot of great opportunity, but boy, it's really expensive.
It is.
And then you compare it to something, it's like, oh, this is, you can actually afford to go to a soccer game. You can go to, theater.
One of the things that I like about Columbus is that, and it's expanding, but yet the cost of living, it's consistent, staying the same. It might be gradual a little bit. The housing is just...
The housing
is difficult. We know that we'll get into it. But generally speaking, the food price and stuff like that is generally kind of quite relatively affordable compared to other places, I would assume.
Other places.
But I think the population is growing. It's kind of sort of affecting the housing now.
It is.
Yeah.
Housing prices are based on supply and demand, no matter where you are in the country.
Right.
And we have not been building enough homes, so that's apartments, duplexes, all the different types of housing.
Yeah.
We have not been building enough to meet the demand of people who are moving to this community, and therefore the price goes up. And unfortunately, until we have more units built, we are not going to see a stabilization in housing prices. And also, you have to think about in cities, we can't expand forever. You can't build enough single-family homes to house every person who is in Columbus is moving to Columbus. There's just not the space for that. LA tried that and got sprawl.
Big time.
Big time sprawl. I used to live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and when I was there, when they experienced their exponential growth and housing shortage. And back in 1985, $2,000 would only get me a humble apartment.
85.
Okay.
Yeah.
So an idea.
Yeah.
Give me an idea of the prices.
No, I'm trying to think, what is it like now?
In the San Francisco Bay Area, $110,000 is a year income is considered low income. $110,000. Yeah. You can't live off of that in the Bay Area. And so when I lived there, what was happening is, like, every couple of years, I would get priced out, not only just where I was living, but I would get priced out of the entire city. And this is common for everybody. You move farther and farther and farther away. Your commute gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And simply because there weren't enough places for people to live. And communities did not want density. They didn't want apartments because, and we have this here in Columbus, apartments, there's an apartment stigma where there's this assumption if you're living in an apartment, you must be, one, they always assume it's subsidized, that you're poor, that you are a criminal, or you're a pedophile and you're not going to take care of the property, and it's going to cause crime, and it's going to lower property values. And we all know that this is not true. Big cities have apartment buildings because you got to build up.
Yeah.
Because you can't build out anymore.
No.
Go to Chicago.
Yeah.
Go to New York. Go to any of the big cities. People live in apartments.
Tower up, yeah.
People of all income levels live in apartments. Apartments that are very nice. And, there are tons of apartments next to my subdivision. I did not get an increase in crime. My property values skyrocketed I'm paying, my property taxes went up,
Yeah.
they doubled. So it's okay. You will not lose property values if an apartment moves in next door. But I'm seeing Columbus heading in this same direction that San Francisco Bay Area had, if we don't build more. And so we've got to build more density.
Okay. What role is the Columbus City has on kind of sort of controlling that or managing that?
Well, it's changing the zoning code
Okay.
that will allow builders to build, say, a duplex where they used to only be able to build a single-family home, to build an apartment building where previously they were only able to build 2 stories. Well, now they could build 4 stories.
So what is that zoning process like?
Long and arduous.
Okay. Let's
We
talk
just
about that. Yeah.
we just completed phase 1 of zone-in, which was just zoning only on the major corridors. The broad streets, the high
Okay.
streets, those. It's compiles of like maybe 5% of the whole city, so tiny little part.
Yeah.
And these are the major corridors. They're the ones where Lincus is, some of them Lincus will be on and whatnot. Allowing greater height on those corridors. So doesn't apply to anything outside of those corridors, just on the main corridors.
Okay.
The Department of Development spent 2 years, a little over 2 years, working on creating new zoning, because the zoning code in Columbus is 70 years old.
Yeah.
Life's changed a lot since since back then.
Big time.
And so developing, zoning that would now allow for building these taller,
to build up?
but to
Okay.
build up,
Okay.
to build up. And we went through a long period of hearings, and there were a lot of people who were opposed to it.
Are those here open to the public?
Hearings are always open to the public.
Okay.
And
Do you have to register? You have to pre-register in
you
order for
only
you to
have
come, or
to.
you can just walk in?
You only have to register if you want to be a speaker.
Okay, but if you just want to come and
If you want to just
observe
come and listen, you
yeah.
can just show up.
Okay.
You can watch it on our
Okay.
YouTube channel.
Okay.
So we had hearings, and we got a lot of feedback, and there were a lot of people who were like, "This makes total sense.
Yeah.
That's the area where we should be doing the taller buildings." And there were other people who were, I don't want tall buildings.
Early on our conversation about the zoning, it's 75 years old, and there's more people moving in here, right? So do you think it's kind of sort of push those newcomers to Columbus?
What happens is people just end up moving farther and farther out and having to commute, and then you have more traffic.
Then we're going to have to increase our transportation on that as a city, right?
Because that's what happens. You have to move. I mean, right now you have people who are moving farther out so that it's more affordable.
Okay.
But then you have to drive into
Yeah.
work, and
So pick your poison.
but not maybe
In terms
move
of
farther
cost,
out.
in
Then
terms
you,
of
but,
cost,
but
yeah.
then you also end up, the more you have to build outside of your city in these other places, then you get the suburban sprawl.
Yeah.
Then you become the next LA, and we
Yeah.
don't want to be the next LA.
Okay.
We don't want to be, miles of driving through
Yeah.
subdivisions.
So let's talk about the project of the transportation.
Mm-hmm.
So just give us an overview. What is that like?
Well, when I first moved to Columbus, I took a look at our public transportation and went, well, wow, it's really awful.
Yeah.
Because I was commuting in San Francisco Bay Area. I was accustomed to this great, robust public transportation system. And then I got here and I'm like, well, I couldn't even use public transportation to get anywhere from my home.
It's difficult.
Yeah. I would
Don't
have to
even know.
walk on a very busy street that had no sidewalks so that I could go to a very even busier street that doesn't have sidewalks, so I can stand in the dirt on the side of the road and wait for a COTA bus that would only went by once an hour, and it goes in the wrong direction for what I needed. Link Us is a real exciting opportunity to bring bus rapid transit to main corridors in Columbus. Bus rapid transit looks, feels, and everything like light rail, It's just that it's on wheels instead of being on rails. They're not the regular kind of buses that we use now. They're wider, they're articulated, so that's like the two buses, connected together. There will be, in our town city core, there will be platforms, so that you go on a platform, you pay your fee at the platform, and you walk or roll straight onto the bus. As opposed to now, you have to climb up onto the bus.
Yeah.
Now you'll be on a platform. There
You
will be
just walk on.
You just walk on, or you roll on with your wheelchair, your whatever.
Bike.
There'll be a place to put your bike. People with a stroller. It'll be easy to get on, and it will be dedicated lanes. Whereas now you go and you're stopped at when you're stopped in traffic, and you'll have dedicated lanes that also have the feature of the signals that will enable the bus to keep moving instead of having to stop and wait until the light
So
changes.
how is that going to be designed? Is that going to be specific areas, or is it going to go
part one
Okay.
is going to be on West Broad Street, and we have federal funding for that.
Okay.
We need the Link Us initiative that will be on the ballot this November.
Okay.
Will provide the funding for continuing the program, plus provide transit supportive infrastructure.
Who's going to provide that?
It's a whole bunch of people.
Okay.
So the Link Us initiative will be a half-cent increase in sales tax. So it's not a levy on your property taxes.
Okay.
And this
So now we pay 7.5 is going to increase?
Yes.
Okay. To what?
And whatever the math is for that.
Okay. When will that take in? Will that kick in?
And then everybody in the CODA service area, which does go into a little bit of like our surrounding counties a little bit, that's increase in sales tax will be in the whole CODA area. Because not only will it pay for this bus rapid transit, there'll be West Broad Street, East Main Street, it's going to go up Olentangy to Bethel to Sawmill.
Okay.
And then the other two routes, we're still working on deciding, because we need one that goes northeast, and then we need one that goes south, so deciding what would be the best ones for those two.
Okay.
But Link Us also, the money generated from this, not only one pays for this expansion of the bus rapid transit, but it also provides funding for transit supportive infrastructure. So those sidewalks that we currently don't have to get to these main streets, it's going to help pay for sidewalks. It's going to help pay for multimodal pathways where you can do bike or your scooter or and there'll be bike lanes and all those other things that you use to get your transportation. And then of course with CODA Plus, which is that last mile where you can schedule it to get you to the bus, the main bus line. So it will help pay for expanding all of those. And this project, actually, it's not just the City of Columbus, it's MORPC, which is the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission.
Okay.
They're all a part of this, and actually, if you go onto their website, they even show where all these different bike trails and whatnot that are going, and sidewalks.
I think I've seen a presentation through the City Council.
Yes.
The three gentlemen. Okay.
Yes, so that's an exciting thing that's coming. I think one of the most exciting things is that for once, something big and important is starting on the west side.
That's good. I like it.
We are the first leg. We are the end. If you'd like to get an idea of what the look and feel of that is, that CODA has augmented reality bus tours.
Okay.
I'm hosting one on the 29th from 1 to 3. What'll be the main, the first route, the West Broad Street going to downtown. And there's an app that you put on your phone, and they stop at the different places, and you use your phone, and it'll show you what this is going to look like, what the platform is going to look like, what the neighborhood around, has the potential to look like.
Right.
So, like the area where the Westland Mall is torn down, look like, well, but if might possibly look like this.
Yeah.
And in front of Third Way Cafe, it was like, oh, wow, this is what it's going to look like to get on the platform and catch the bus from this particular spot. So it's just a cool way to experience what bus rapid transit will look like. Just using your smartphone.
Yeah, exciting way to attract people to start using or utilizing the upcoming transportation. If that works out. And when is the phase 1 going to kick in?
They'll start, Chris, now, start working on it means engineering. So a lot of that start working on it is something that we're not going to see.
Right.
But we passed the funding for the first part of that last month. It's really exciting to bring bus rapid transit to Columbus, and the folks can start riding in 2028. That's right around the corner. Please check out Link Us, because that's going to really be life-changing for the city.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you.